Welcome to MarcusG.tv. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. I'm a chef on a mission. Today's mission is eggs. Should you pay extra for cage-free or organic eggs? The main question here is, should you pay extra for eggs, is my question, but I'm quoting an article here from the Cleveland Clinic Health Essentials, and the title says, should you pay extra for organic or cage-free eggs? Egg labels aren't all they're cracked up to be. This is from March 18th, 2016. So here we go. We spend all this extra money to buy eggs from the best sources, but it's hard to be sure about their quality. One reason is because the labeling on egg cartons is bewildering. There are so many terms. Try to look them up on the USDA Food and Drug Administration or Department of Ag websites, and you'll find lengthy or confusing definitions. Don't get me wrong, egg labels can be helpful and effective. Some tell you what the hens were fed, others tell you a bit about their environment, but still others tell you how humanely they were raised. So here's what to look for, according to this article. Organic. Organic means the hens received organic feed and were not raised in cages. When you eat organic eggs, you know the hens' feed did not include animal byproducts, synthetic fertilizers, sewage sludge, pesticides, and other unsavory ingredients. Although antibiotics are very rarely used in the egg industry due to a regulatory loophole, it is possible that organic eggs could come from hens that were given antibiotics. That's interesting. I didn't know that. It's worth checking into. Although growth hormones are banned from the poultry industry, antibiotics are not. So no growth hormones for eggs, growth hormones for chickens that you eat the meat, but not for the eggs. Omega-3 enriched. Egg yolks contain a small amount of omega-3, a heart-healthy fat. However, providing hens a diet high in omega-3, such as flaxseed or fish oil, can boost the omega-3 content in their eggs. However, according to the FDA, claims that omega-3 enriched eggs lower the risk of heart disease are unfounded because eggs also contain cholesterol and saturated fat. Now, I remember in the late 90s when they first started doing, or when I first found out about them feeding omega-3 eggs, the local food reporter in Colorado had called me and said, Marcus, do you know anything about this? I'm doing an article on this. Can you help me out? So that's how I first got introduced to omega-rich eggs. Free range or free roaming. This means that the hens producing the eggs were raised outdoors or given outdoor access. In addition to eating grains, these hens may forage for wild plants and insects, but the quality of the outdoor area can really vary. Okay, so this is not to say free range or free roaming that these birds live outside, these hens live outside, is really misleading when you come to a more of a factory level or a larger level, even some of the smaller levels. Because what this really means is that the hens have access inside, okay, inside their free roaming. They may have access to go outside, okay, they have access to run outside, but that's not basically their life. And if they do go outside, it's in a contained area. It could have a roof on it, it could have netting on the outside, they could just be on actual dirt. So there's really not, vegetation out there for them to be feeding on and all this other things. You might think of free range or free roaming as some picturesque chicken out there on a ranch on a green field, and that's most likely that's far, far from the case. They're inside and they have access to outside, whether it's access for a limited time during the day. I mean, you have to understand that all these definitions were created for industry. The big industry created these definitions so you'd feel good about your food so they could sell you the products. When in turn, sometimes that description that describes it would think it's common sense, but their definition is based upon profits and their sustainability of profits, not based upon what you picture. So there's just so much conflict of interest in the USDA and the FDA and all across the board in all food production. There's so much money that goes into lobbying. There's money that goes into everything, donations to these environmental groups and everything. So everything you're reading from these people can be totally 100% skewed. So don't think you're buying free range eggs and there's a happy chicken out there on a ranch, because that's not the case, especially if you're going to the grocery store. The last definition here is cage-free. Cage-free is not the same as free range. This means that the hens are not bound to cages and have limited access to food and water. Oh, I'm sorry, unlimited access to food and water. Conditions on cage-free farms can be miserable. Overcrowded barns and poultry houses don't give hens enough room to forage for plants and insects or dust bathe. A new label, barn roaming, may better describe those hens confined to barns. And that's I totally agree with that. Barn roaming would really be much more accurate. The problem is you can buy chickens or eggs that have omega-3 diet, a rich omega-3 diet, that are basically concentration camp eggs. So the way chicken eggs are mainly produced is they put several chickens per box, per cage, per wire cage, and they stack these cages all the way up, and the chickens are sitting there on top of each other in boxes, and that's how they lay their eggs, and they never get to move out of these boxes, which means their feet grow through them, and they peck at each other, which is why they debeak chickens. The whole egg industry can really be just a disaster and a nightmare. Just what they do to chickens, how they mutilate them, and these birds can't even move. And probably the sad thing here is that once these chickens are totally done laying eggs, they probably get ground up for chicken tenders and chicken nuggets, and this is probably what goes into fast food restaurants. And now they're claiming they use 100% white meat or real meat, when it's so, this whole layers and layers of food descriptions and production is just so confusing and very, very, very manipulative. So now a lot of people are going to say, well, I buy eggs from my neighbor. My neighbor has really organic eggs. But what is your neighbor feeding the chickens is my first question. Well, she buys just grain, right? Well, she buys just grain that is probably GMO, that is probably laced with pesticides, that probably sat in a warehouse that got ground up, that sat in heat, that totally got rancid. So the chicken is eating rancid GMO carcinogenic grains, and you're thinking that your neighbor's chickens are better. Oh, well, my neighbor's chickens run out in the yard. Well, yeah, of course your neighbor's chickens run out in the yard, but most people supplement the chickens with other type of feed. And I don't think your neighbor is buying 100% organic GMO, pesticide-free grains in their whole form that's been refrigerated, and she or he's keeping them refrigerated in a cool climate, properly controlled, and then grinding those to order every meal for the chickens. I don't think your neighbor's doing that. Now, however, there are some farms out there that actually do that. I've known of farms that are really super, super strict like that, and that's fantastic. But here's the best way to tell the quality of your eggs: the price tag. That's really the main difference right there. Whether you pay $1.99 a dozen or $8.99 a dozen. Yes, $8.99 a dozen. Those eggs do exist out there. If you're paying those kind of prices, from $2 to $8, $9. There's a direct correlation. The more you pay for the dozen of eggs, the better quality the egg's going to be, the better quality the chicken's going to live. You're paying for better feed, for better conditions of the chicken. The chicken had a much better life. That's what you're paying for. So it's up to you if you want to spend $2 for concentration camp eggs that might be sprinkled with a little flax to say, oh, and there's a really confusing label out there in the white carton that they stamped the eggs, say high omegas or whatever, omega-rich diets, and those are nothing but concentration camp eggs. The chickens are stacked in boxes, or stacked way high. They excrement all over each other. It's a disaster what can happen in a chicken in an egg farm. Total disaster. Now the other things that happen in a chicken, I keep referring to chicken as in a egg farm, is when males are born, males are gotten rid of ASAP because they don't want to put any resources towards a male chicken, a male laying chicken, because males don't lay eggs. So of course, instead of feeding them or putting them in any space or whatsoever, they immediately get ground up alive or suffocated alive in garbage bags. And you can look all over the internet and you can find videos like this. They basically take the chickens, they turn them over, they look and see what sex they are, and the males basically just get tossed in some kind of grinding device that is actually on and going, and the chickens get ground up live, feathers and everything, or they get thrown into garbage cans, the bag sealed up, and they're thrown away. Now the advantage to these companies for grinding them alive like that and putting them into some kind of form is that they're going to get money for that. There's a market for everything in these processing plants. They've come up with so many creative ways to use everything. When I was in Colorado, I had the pleasure, or not so good pleasure, of being in a slaughterhouse more times than I'd like to admit. And this was years and years ago, before I changed my diet and before I understood the effect of food on our bodies and our environment, and how cattle are being treated. This is how I first learned how cattle are being treated. This was a very clean and much more smaller scaled slaughterhouse. But I have to tell you, everything that went in, when it walked in, it left in a form of some sort to some kind of industry, whether it was a makeup industry, buying the brains, I mean, you name it, the leftover parts going to the dog food industry. This stuff would get separated, it would get put in different compartments, and at one point, tractor trailers would back up and just take loads and loads of miscellaneous cow parts and stick it in a truck and haul it off to the Purina factory, the dog food factory, or to a rendering factory, to render all this stuff down, to put into makeup, to put into dog food, to put into soap, to put somewhere. Every single thing that came out of that processing plant was 100% usable. It got used. The hide, everything, the hooves. I mean, it's hard to believe until you see it for yourself, how everything gets separated, and the odor and the stink, and it was so gruesome. It was like, ugh. So, in the chicken laying, in the hen industry, in the egg industry, the same thing. Those chickens are ground up, and they're sent somewhere, because that's a valuable protein for a dog or in a cat. Extremely valuable protein for your pets. So they just get ground up and get put in. Now, to be honest with you, that's probably one of the better sources that these companies like Purina or whoever they are, Dog Chow, is sourcing from. Because again, they're sourcing miscellaneous protein from rendering plants, from these processing plants, that who knows what is going on with the diseases and everything that's happening here. And this is why our pets are getting so sick, is because there's a direct correlation to the food that we're giving them. And of course, we're always told by our vets, don't give them table food, don't give your dogs table food, when in actuality, giving your dog table food might be the best option, because you can control what's going into the food. You can cook your own chicken, you can cook your own rice, you can cook your own potatoes, you can add ground up vegetables into your dog's food. There's a lot of recipes out there how to make high quality pet food, and it doesn't take much at all, cat and dog. So back to the eggs. Direct correlation with the cost of the egg, what it costs, the chicken had a better life. Now, here's the point I'm going to make. Is there even a need for eggs? Okay, because I personally don't think there is. I don't personally eat eggs. We barely use any eggs in my restaurant. We have a Sunday brunch that we do eggs, but we also have a tofu scramble. Did you know you can actually take the water out of a can of chickpeas or gigante beans, or really a lot of different beans, the bean water, and you can actually cook that up, and that'll cook and act like an egg. You can make souffles out of it. You can make meringues out of it, which you would use egg whites for. You can scramble it up just like an egg. It is amazing, amazing, amazing. And of course, the byproduct is you have awesome beans coming out of the can to use for one of your meals. It's high fiber, high protein, a lot of nutrients in it, a lot of calcium in it. So we have to just get past the thought of that we need an egg to survive. We need an egg on our breakfast table. We need an egg for cakes. If you're making cakes, you say, oh, I need an egg for this, I need an egg for that. You don't need an egg for that. We use Energy Egg Replacer for all of our baked goods. This allows us to make vegan baked cakes, vegan baked whatever, pies, whatever we need. But I gotta tell you, there's a lot of recipe books out there that you don't even need an egg in it, or the egg replacer. Energy makes the egg replacer. This is really good. It's GMO, non-GMO certified. Bob's Red Mill makes an egg replacer. I'm not sure if anybody else does, but I'm sure there is, because it's a growing market. So you don't need eggs in your cookies. You can make chocolate chip cookies without eggs, people. You can make banana bread without eggs. You can make chocolate cake without eggs. You can even make all that without an egg powder replacer, which is basically sorghum or potato starch or tapioca. There's a mixture of several different things that go into it. So don't even think that you need an egg to bake with at all. If you want to do an egg wash, there's other alternatives for egg washing. The real bottom line is eggs, 1 dozen eggs take almost 700 gallons of water to produce, which is an insane amount of water when you think that, oh, I just wouldn't run 700 gallons of water out my driveway and let it go into the street because I want to feed my family for breakfast. Most people would never take 700 gallons and just throw it right out their front door. And the neighbors would be like, what in the world are you doing? Why are you wasting so much water? But yet that same dozen of eggs is 700 gallons. That's what you're feeding your family. This is a valuable water. The water consumption in the world is dwindled. The human consumption is dwindled by what it takes livestock to produce eggs, meat, dairy, especially milk and cheese. The water production is insane. 700 gallons is not a lot when you look at the whole realm of like what it takes to produce a pound of beef at almost 2,500 gallons of water. So a quarter pounder burger can take the same amount as a whole dozen of eggs. So it's mind-boggling and fathoming to think that we're in this cycle of we need to eat eggs, we need to eat meat, we need to do this, we need to do that. And then to look and say, oh, the carbohydrates are killing us. Carbohydrates, starches, this and that, and sugar's bad, and let's go on this ketogenic diet, and we're going to save ourselves, and this and that, and let's get into ketosis, and let's start burning fat, and let's eat more fat, and let's eat more protein. And it's just like, where do these authors come up with all this stuff when you look at our environment and the global warming we're having and the emissions, and when you look at the whole overall aspect of this, the majority of this is coming from livestock production. Over 50% livestock production outweighs all these other industries combined. Whole automotive industry, the transportation industry, the way we produce our food is killing our earth. It's killing land. It's killing the ocean. We heard a couple years ago about the BP oil spill and how can they do this? How can they do this? That's disgusting. I'm never going to buy from BP again. And yet you turn around and eat meat that is corn-fed, that's massively overgrazed the plains, and that's all the excrement is running down into the Gulf of Mexico, and you have the dead zone, which is probably 10 times bigger and grows massively bigger than the oil spill, the BP oil spill ever was, and this dead zone keeps going and going and going, but yet you won't support BP's oil, but you'll keep supporting the dead zone, the diet that's causing the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And the dead zone is this massive area. Doesn't get talked about much because they know the cause. They know what it's coming from. It's from all the agricultural runoff through the Mississippi River. But again, you have the beef industry, the egg industry, you have the pork industry, you have all these industries that have such a hold financially on our government, on the USDA, on the FDA, on our senators. They have so much lobbyists and so much money to put into all this, that all this stuff is just covered up. So you think, well, I'm going to take a shorter shower, or I'm going to not buy BP oil, or I'm going to ride my bike to work today. And a matter of fact, you're sitting there eating 2-3 eggs for breakfast and a quarter pounder for lunch and who knows what for dinner. And all of your efforts are just totally shadowed by what you're doing in your diet. So you don't need eggs. Now, so you're saying, well, I still have to have eggs and this and that. So then reduce your egg consumption. Reduce your egg consumption drastically. Reduce, instead of reduce it by half. Reduce it by half and see how it goes. There's so many other options to have for breakfast. One of my favorite options is a green smoothie. I love green smoothies. You can take coconut water, you can take flax milk or soy milk, almond milk, add a couple frozen bananas, add a powder if you want, a protein powder, add a vegan protein powder. Of course, doesn't make sense to add a whey protein powder or an egg, some kind of egg supplement. There's so many different things you can add to that morning smoothie that can fill you up. If not, make whole grain pancakes, make whole grain waffles, roast off a sweet potato. Just eat a sweet potato whole for breakfast. My daughter used to eat avocados and cucumbers for breakfast. There's nothing wrong with eating vegetables for breakfast, okay? Nothing at all. There's nothing wrong with eating a salad for breakfast. So again, we've just been trained, we've been culturally trained that this is what we eat for breakfast. It's eggs and bacon. And when you look at the hard facts, eggs and bacon just don't make sense, especially the eggs. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. Thanks for watching this video. If you like my videos, please hit like, subscribe to my channel, and definitely pass it on.